Staff at the Greater Newcastle Permanent Building Society have been collecting money for Robert since the beginning of February. $2,050 was raised to finance Robert's trip to compete in the Far Eastern and Southern Pacific Games, being held in Hong Kong at the end of this month. Robert is an accomplished swimmer, having won all the events he entered at the recent state championships. Despite his successes, Robert is modest about his abilities.
You can't go to a place like Hong Kong and not get excited about it. You've got to psych yourself up for the competition, and you've got to really think about what you're doing and who you're representing, which in this case is my country, Australia.
What does that money mean to you?
This money now guarantees the fact that I can go. I've told the committee who selected that I can go, and with the help of the people at the bank, I am now going to Hong Kong on the 28th of next month, which is a great thrill and it'll be a fantastic experience for me.
A hairy trip down to Sydney.
Well, we knew that.
The Lord Mayor says the meetings had been cordial, but the BHP didn't disclose its intentions for Newcastle.
There's not much point in going to the federal government unless we know the plans of the BHP. So that was the first thing that we had to do, and I mean by we, the Hunter Development Board and the Chamber of Commerce, and they were represented by Mr Varley and Mr Alec Young. Asked them to join with us in the public meeting on Tuesday, and they will be sending a representative. It'll be either one of the Newcastle representatives, Mr Risby, or someone from Melbourne. So at least they're taking part.
Did the BHP disclose any plans that they have for the future?
No, their plans are still on the drawing board. I think they have consultants, McKinsey's, and that won't be finished until November, and they assured us that they don't know themselves the plans until they're finished in November.
It's really bringing players from, around Sydney, the top players from Sydney, around Tamworth, around that area. Really.
Both in men and women?
Yes, men and women, yeah.
Every time I talk to you and say you're one of the favourites, you don't play that well. Do I put the mocker on you?
I think you must.
What's the form like at the moment?
Not bad. I played last week in Sydney and I come second in the country championship, so I was quite happy.
Well, you'd have to be happy with that.
Yeah.
Remember, with the golf course, your home ground, you'd have to go well here with the course in such magnificent condition.
It helps. It's got tricky greens, and it helps if you've got a little bit of knowledge, yeah.
Well, the rain seems to have gone away, and the weekend, Sunday and Monday, it should be really nice.
It looks good, doesn't it?
Who's the one to beat?
I think Louise Mallard won the state girls. It's pretty hard to beat.
Youngster from Morisset.
Yeah.
Pretty local too. What about in the men? Have you got a favourite in the men to win?
Ray Carlin.
Ray Carlin. He'll beat your husband, will he?
Good competitor. I hope not.
Yes, we've got the Australian Spring Car Championships, that's in January. We've got the American Sedan team there also arriving in early January and going through their season, but prior to that we've also got quite a number of other Americans which are going to arrive in the country about or early November and stay right through till mid-February or something like that, so it looks like a very, very big year.
The sedan cars are improving all the time, and now we are, I believe, up with the Yanks.
Yes, I feel we're probably on the same standard as what America is today. The car, as you see today, the one of Ralph Ranger, is on a par to about 10 others are going to hit the track within the next couple of weeks, or next 6 weeks I would say at the most, and we'll have something like about 15 of these type of motor cars, which is equivalent to anything the Americans can bring out, and with a team of cars like that at the Motordrome, I don't think there's much that can top that.
The lap record's got to go.
Oh, definitely.
Today we're loading 2 vessels from Dyke 4 and 5 berth, and that marks the completion of the 3rd stage of our 4-stage expansion and gives the port a capacity of 23 million tonnes per annum.
The 4th and final stage of the loading complex will take the port's yearly capacity from the present 23 megatons to 28 megatons by the end of the year. That stage features a second rail receival depot and a conveyor system capable of delivering coal direct from the train to the ship, bypassing the stockpiles. But why is Port Waratah pressing ahead when the overseas coal trade is in recession? Mr. Knights has an answer to that.
Well, I think it's very important for the confidence of the customers that we must win back, that they can see that we can complete construction ahead of schedule, and we are ready to meet their demands when the market turns up.
Very pleased to have Kenny Bowden back to play as a guest player for the club, and also former Stewart and Lloyd's player Marshall Saber, and I'm sure they'll make a big impact to the side.
Now, you've invited them back to play in this particular match. Is there any significance in them coming back at this time of year to play in a match?
Well, obviously the team did very well in the second half of the competition, and we obviously want to strengthen the team next year, and they would be 2 players that we'd be very keen to sign.
And it was done. God finished what he had been doing.
The dispute is not a simple one. In fact, it's one that could disrupt racing at Broadmeadow for a long time. The stood-down barrier attendants are seeking more than a simple reinstatement. In fact, they are refusing to return to work until they're given a guarantee that those trainers that manned the barriers on Saturday are banned from the track for 12 months. Today, several members of the Australian Workers' Union formed a quiet picket line at the entrance to the racecourse. The picket was an orderly one aimed at discouraging rather than preventing people from entering the ground. However, its effect was minimal. Other racetrack employees, most of them members of the Australian Theatrical Employees Association, reported for work as usual, seemingly undeterred by the title of scabs. At a meeting this morning, about 30 members of the ATEA decided to refuse an Australian Workers' Union request for support during the dispute. The racing fraternity also seemed indifferent to the picket. This afternoon, a large crowd gathered at the racetrack, ready for the start of the first race at 1:30. And the race went ahead as scheduled, with the barriers being manned for the second time by trainers. Those trainers say they will continue to stand in for the barrier attendants until the dispute is settled.
Our award states that trainers or registered people can lead horses in, and I think this is where this problem stemmed from in the first place.
So you believe that the trainers will continue to man the barriers until the proper barrier attendants return to work?
Well, I would say they would.
The response of the Australian Workers' Union to that decision is an angry one.
They're a bunch of scabs and they're doing our work.
So where do you go from here?
Well, I've already made a report to my branch secretary. It will no doubt go to the Trades and Labour Council of New South Wales, and it will also be brought up here on Thursday at the Newcastle Trades Hall Council.
And what do you expect to be the result of those meetings?
The trade union movement has never yet run away from a fight. This is not going to be the first.
Winds of up to 45 knots caused the clip-lock roofing at this block of flats in Memorial Drive to come loose. Although police were called to the scene, they were unable to take any action without the assistance of the police rescue squad. At one stage there was a danger that the windswept roofing would collide with the adjacent power lines. Resident David Eldridge says the roof was only replaced 2 months ago.
The landlord just put it up about 2 months ago. We were about a month with tarpaulin up there, and now then we have no roof.
With help from Shortland County Council workmen and uniformed policemen, the members of the police rescue squad were able to stop the roofing from hurtling down onto the street. The men used rope to tie the roof down, but the wind still played havoc with the sheeting that was already laying on the ground. Despite the strong wind, members of the rescue squad say they're confident that no more sheets of iron will blow off this roof tonight.
QE2 Sports Centre
at the opening ceremony last Thursday, 6,000 children each formed a part of the Australian flag, some holding coloured placards. It added the final touch to the showpiece which made Australia proud. You may well ask, where did they get the thousands of coloured sheets? The answer is from our own region. A local firm was chosen to manufacture each and every one of the sheets. And for 6 months they kept the secret about Brisbane's plans for the opening ceremony. This is the product. Core flute, a plastic imitation cardboard, but lighter and waterproof. It has already put the manufacturers, Concept Plastics of Tuggerah, on the road to success, but the Commonwealth Games order created quite a few headaches. It wasn't easy keeping all the different colours in order.
It's quite amusing because a couple of times there we goofed, and we did have the wrong placard on the wrong numbered one on the front. But this is why we did it, to be able to check them out, because you can imagine 8,000 placards, it's a lot of placards.
Luckily, at the right moment, the operation went off without a hitch. The placards from Tuggerah formed the gigantic Union Jack on the Australian flag and many other colourful designs in the opening ceremony. And how did the manufacturers feel?
Very proud to be an Australian, to be involved in the Commonwealth Games.
And to see the placards go up?
Yes, to see the actual designs working out correctly.
Federal level. Last night's meeting evoked strong emotions from both speakers and audience alike. The meeting was convened by the Newcastle City Council to discuss possible alternative employment for the 1,600 workers to be retrenched by the BHP in Newcastle. But that topic was rarely broached. The federal opposition spokesman on employment, Mr Bob Hawke, says federal government policies are to blame for the effects being felt in the downturn in the steel industry, while Premier Rand called for a moratorium to stop retrenchments at the BHP until the findings of the newly formed Steel Advisory Council are made known.
I think there is a groundswell of opinion that BHP has acted precipitately, and it's to be hoped that the present proceedings that are before Mr Justice Fisher will result in some moratorium, because it just seems that BHP doesn't yet have a plan for the future, and people are being put out of work long before any real decisions made as to what the management's determined for the rest of the 1980s.
Chairman of the Hunter Development Board, Mr Alex Young, says an announcement will be made by the Newcastle City Council today about suggestions for alternative employment for the soon-to-be retrenched steelworkers. But the mood of the people was an angry and disappointed one as they left City Hall last night. More than 800 people packed Newcastle City Hall last night, hoping to hear some solutions to the problems facing the BHP and its Newcastle workforce. But no immediate answers could be given. Premier Rann, Federal Spokesman on Employment Mr Bob Hawke, ACTU President Mr Cliff Dolan and FIA Assistant Secretary Mr Harry Hurrell travelled to Newcastle to speak at the meeting. But the mood became agitated as members of the audience were refused permission to speak.
I'm sorry, my friend in the gallery, I'm in the chair and I said there'll be no questions.
The meeting was convened by the Newcastle City Council to discuss alternative employment for the 1,600 workers to be retrenched by the BHP in Newcastle. Unfortunately, this topic was rarely broached. Mr Rann claims the BHP acted inappropriately by announcing the retrenchments at this time.
I think there is a groundswell of opinion that BHP has acted precipitately, and it's to be hoped that the present proceedings that are before Mr Justice Fisher will result in some moratorium, because it just seems that BHP doesn't yet